So, thank everyone for coming back. I'm glad you enjoyed the last episode. Well, we got a lot to get on with, so let's see what we can see. Hunter Biden is on a book tour, shilling his new autobiography, or as it's known on the street, making that crack money, honey. So, he's been doing a bunch of softball interviews, including CBS and his now infamous Kimmel fiasco, where the two donuts were branded by viewers as Dumb and Dumber, as they seem to try and make the 50-year-old teenager the victim in all this, while covering up his illegal and immoral behavior to those not paying attention. As we can see with NPR tweeting the statement about their thoughts on the Biden scandal, treating the actions of Biden Jr. very, very differently from those of Donald Trump Jr., who they try as they might every day for 4 years, as we all saw, aim to smear him constantly, mostly unsuccessfully, with mainstream media saying Donald Trump Jr.'s possibly took cocaine before his convention speech before promptly receiving this sick burn as a reply. So, we have a literal crackhead who has committed felonies, apparently lying about his drug addiction while trying to buy a pistol. Someone who seems to have the morality of the Marquis de Sade, the way he acts, guided by his father and protected by the FBI and other power structures through his time at Yale, skipping through his political and business life and accumulating all of the riches, where anyone else, would be rotting in jail right now with twice the crack mouth and a massive anus. With this laptop scandal perhaps being the largest in recent history, exposing secret pay-for-play deals with Chinese assets, using his father as collateral, while his father at the same time is making deals publicly with China during a time when the Chinese government is ramping up its military aggression and economic aggression in many places around the world, effectively creating a new Cold War. So thank you, Joe. Sleepy Joe. Oh, no, where I am, Joe, thank you. With the US, when it comes to finances and global influence. But Biden Jr. is allowed to slide through this whole issue by brushing it off and saying he doesn't even know if it was his or not. I mean, it could be, right? I don't know, man. I don't know if the thing's me or not, Disregarding the forensic proof and his digital fingerprint confirming that it did in fact belong to him. With the testimony of the computer repairman saying he was bloody mash up, bruv, when he brought the thing in. So, rules for thee and not for me. So these two pillocks actually sat there jokingly and asked about smoking cheese and fake soy sauce hair colour, when really we all want to go, hey Hunter, what about the laptop, huh? What's going on in that? Why is a 50-year-old crackhead felon not in jail rotting away right now, huh? The 14-year-old niece? Ukraine? His father firing a prosecutor and blackmailing the country, for $1 billion, which he admits doing on film to keep you safe. Why were you receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars at a job in Burisma in the Ukraine in the first place? Huh? The hooker baby, the crack mouth sex photos, the affair with your dead brother's widow, meeting and dealing with Chinese assets and arranging political meetings for your father for political and economic currency. Huh? Hunter? CBS? Kimmel? Any of that? No. No, of course not. Just smiles, pleasantries, and lots of sweeping under that rug, huh? It's going to be like this soon. And yes, I will admit, him smoking cheese is hysterical. Whew. So, the George Floyd trial roundup. So, we have many major developments in Series 1 of The Tale of Black Jesus. Reasonable doubt seems to be building from many different aspects of evidence being provided, and that's all Chauvin needs. With Maurice Lester Hall, who was in the vehicle when Floyd was arrested and spoke to police on the scene, pleading the fifth now, and refusing to testify as he and his lawyers are worried about incriminating himself on third-degree murder charges, which is dealing a lethal substance that resulted in someone's death. With Floyd's girlfriend also admitting on the stand that he, Maurice Lester Hall, was where they purchased their new stronger pills from, i.e. most likely their drug dealer, and had potentially been the one to give Floyd the fake $20 bill. I mean, this guy seems to be all over the scene with this one, huh? So the mainstream media is hiding the details of the case, perhaps deliberately, perhaps maliciously. I'll let you decide. which will only lead to those who aren't paying close enough attention to the case, the testimony, and the evidence day by day being left in complete shock at the possible acquittal verdict. And we all know that this will lead to mass spread violence, right? The peaceful mass spread violence. See, they seem to only be reporting when the prosecutor makes a point here or there, but consistently fail to mention some of the bigger moments of the trial when the defense seems to constantly poke holes in the state's witnesses and their testimonies, and who seem to be having a better case so far than the state, who has made basic and tactical errors all along the way, with testimony leaving the prosecutor and his team, quote, visibly shaken and angry after their witnesses have been cross-examined or evidence looked into further than they expected. First, we have video evidence and testimony that the knee was not in fact on George Floyd's neck, but was moving and shifting, and most of the time resting on his upper shoulder, adding that doubt to the fact that George Floyd was strangled to death or having his airways cut off by the knee of Derek Chauvin. Strangely, mainstream media has now changed its language without blinking, adapting their stories to the neck and the shoulder. Even though we all know the knee on the shoulder of George Floyd was never an issue in the first place, it was a knee on the neck, right? Second, the MPD use of force expert brought in by the prosecutor admitted the way George Floyd was actively resisting arrest, and with the physicality of both him being large and under the influence, Derek Chauvin was in fact allowed to use more force than he did, with him being allowed to taser George Floyd as soon as he arrived on scene, but he chose to use a lesser form of force instead by trying to subdue him physically. Now, there have been arguments whether tasers are in fact lethal force, and this has been debated for years, but this means in this instance it could be said Derek Chauvin was able to have used lethal force if you believe tasers are, and he didn't. He didn't. Doubt. Third, the use of force expert admitted that he himself had in fact detained suspects in exactly the same way as Derek Chauvin had done that day, making it hard to prosecute one if others are using this exact technique in practice. Equally, as big news, was that it was also stated that because the crowd was escalating in its hostility towards the officers, with some having to be held back, and threats and profanity being yelled, CPR couldn't take place. George Floyd couldn't be brought up from the floor or any help provided, as procedure dictates that a situation like this must be locked down, in case the crowd or the suspects begins to attack the police officers and the situation escalates further. The crowd actually could be held somewhat responsible for medical assistance not being performed on him sooner, which may have saved his life. I mean, this witness went so badly for the prosecution that the defense has asked him to come back and be a witness for their side. Doubt. Fourth, another of the prosecutor's witnesses again seemed to bring their case tumbling to a halt when their own EMS expert admitted if she had examined the body without seeing the footage or the news reporting on the case, she would have said it was either a drug overdose, and if there were no drugs in the system, it was a heart attack. Doubt. And fifth, the fact that the court ruled that they will allow evidence of George Floyd's previous overdose and heart attack only months earlier, and almost exactly with the same symptoms: his loss of breath, extremely erratic behaviour, stomach pains and frothing at the mouth, coupled with the fact that he had 3 times the lethal amount of fentanyl in his system, mixed with methamphetamines and other narcotics, which he may have swallowed all at once so as not to be caught with it on him by the police. The fact that the reason why fentanyl is so dangerous is it acutely targets the respiratory system and shuts it down, only with a minuscule amount needed, tiny, to do serious damage, which may be why he's heard saying he can't breathe before he's even put on the ground and held by Derek Chauvin. Doubt. So, with all this, the mainstream media keeps on keeping those facts quiet rather than doing what they are supposed to do and just tell the news. And each moment seems to spread more light and more context to this tragic case and situation every moment, with ever greater threat to actual justice due to the threat of political violence from ideological extremists who want a scalp. They don't really care. They really don't. And a reason to riot and loot and push their ideology on a Western free country. So not justice, just doubt. Alrighty, we have the Dante Wright arrest, shooting and subsequent riots. Now this is a tragic situation with errors on all sides, to say the least. The 19-year-old father, hardly a child except compared to Hunter Biden, I guess. Daunte Wright was not pulled over for an air freshener as was originally stated by his mother, which he told her, and seems to be circulating the sillier minds on social media, but was in fact pulled over for a gross misdemeanor warrant because he was originally charged with aggravated armed robbery, having a pistol without a permit, and fleeing the police. He then skipped his court date, and the altercation with the cops was his next and sadly his last run-in with the law. But he was resisting, as you can see from the video. The cops can even be heard almost pleading with him seconds before he decides to fight them, saying, "Don't do it," repeatedly. But unfortunately, he didn't listen and begins fighting the police officers in an attempt to break away from them and grab something or an escape. I always wonder where to, you know? Where to? For how long? And what, so you can get caught in a month and get twice the jail time? Huh? Then, what seems to be an accident or a complete negligence, or perhaps both, taking no responsibility away from the police officers. But as they are actively fighting Daunte Wright, one of the officers pulls what she thinks is her taser, but is actually her own service pistol, and can be heard saying firstly, "Taser, taser, taser," warning others of what she thinks is about to happen, before firing one lethal shot and then almost whimpering, "Oh no, I shot him," when she realizes she discharged her lethal weapon. Now, as I said, it seems like there were errors on all sides, with Daunte's prior criminal behavior, brandishing weapons in social media posts, and then actively resisting arrest, attempting to jump in his car to flee or grab something, all adding to the context of the arrests now. You have the officers allowing the tussle to take place back in the car after they already had him outside of the vehicle, and the officer under pressure, either not having the training, which is impossible unless 20 years in the force doesn't train you enough, and then we definitely need more funding and training. Not defunding. Or perhaps she didn't have the calmness to execute her plan under pressure, and sadly not execute the suspect. This is all taking place against the backdrop of the Floyd Chauvin trial, so tensions were already high. But Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and other cultural extremists have used this opportunity, of course, to erupt in rioting in many cities around the country that very night, and also attacking ICE facilities and police headquarters. With this now being the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 10th month, depending on when you're watching, of rioting so far, 40 plus people have been arrested. There have been widespread looting, shooting, arson, and assaults, police officers injured with projectiles. Remember those concrete barriers of peace and fencing, the pink barbed wire? Yeah, well, those have been put up again around the New York police headquarters and other tactical buildings. All of this while being hilariously called peaceful protests by nearly all of the mainstream media, with the top Google answers about rioting mentioning riots in Ireland right now. And the Capitol riots 3 months ago at the top of the page. I mean, are they out of their fucking minds? Now, one of the silliest and most cartoonish moments of the whole situation was Mayor Mike Elliott, in fact, tweeting about the, quote, peaceful protests, seriously, while also posting a picture of him talking to the press wearing a fucking army helmet, showing just how farcical the narrative being crammed down everyone's throats really is. This is also a city that months before voted to defund the police, which surely has had an effect on training, manpower, effectiveness, response times, and let alone riot management, all things they could use right now, along with a force to tackle the regular, the normal, regular, serious crime that is skyrocketing ever more in every dense city around the country. Even stranger, the Brooklyn City Center manager was fired after making a public call to remember the importance of due process. Remember that thing in the Constitution. Remember that? That's all he wanted when regarding this officer. Fired. So I guess both he and due process, been slung out the window. But this narrative from the left, the Democrats, and the mainstream media is beginning to crumble. As Charles Barkley correctly stated before, the world freaked out and he was cancelled, that they are using this narrative to push an agenda to divide the people. Segregation via race, sex, religion, agenda, and get them all fighting one another. We have completely different realities adopted by opposing sides of the political sphere, one based in truth and one a biased lie, trying to exist at the same time, causing chaos amongst its society and its citizens. This floundering mainstream media pushing as hard as it can for power, both political and financial, before it collapses. With most mainstream media companies barely competing today with the independent journalists and the websites where real journalism is allowed to shine and thrive. That is, if Google can't stop it first. But this was a tragic accident, with many mistakes on all sides, but now the people, the regular citizens, will have to feel the full effect of the cultural war once again as it attacks their daily lives. I mean, what will happen, huh? Right. Let's look at something a little lighter, huh? So classical liberal, well-renowned public speaker and clinical psychologist Jordan Peterson has been cast as himself to play the new Nazi villain Red Skull, which makes sense, doesn't it? By Marvel Comics and author Ta-Nehisi Coates himself, who is an activist, a woke cultist, and a champion of the racist critical race theory. So it shows where these cultural authoritarians' minds are at, where anything right of full-blown communism, I guess, is considered a Nazi, and shows an amazing lack of self-awareness to never even ask the question, are we the baddies? They, who are sowing the seeds of segregating society, again, introducing race-based policy like the Ivy League schools and Asians, differential punishments based on race and sex, basic racism and sexism, the constant Big Brother propaganda, promulgating communist and Marxist ideology to children and the weak, rioting to inflict political change or domestic terrorism, erasing history and instigating thought crime and 1984 speech bans. Making villains of those who believe in freedom and liberty, Western principles, because they are themselves authoritarian racists. So you see? Who want people to bow to their woke cult or face their wrath. While they are also diluting the term Nazi to meaninglessness, a significant and powerful term that we need. Projecting all their own biases out to everyone in the world, like that stupid woman who wrote the book White Fragility. The good guys. So in the comic, the Red Lobster can be seen with speech boxes saying 10 rules for life and chaos and order. Kind of his thing, leaving little doubt that in fact does represent and demonize the lovely man and his inspiring messages enjoyed by millions. A stark contrast to the number of people buying woke comics these days. An industry ruined by get woke, go broke, sadly. Now Jordan Peterson responded with shock and bewilderment, and I imagine a loss of hope and context that is complicated. Oh my, things are just complicated. A man who seems to be trying to walk the line of Jesus, literally, taking the problems of the world onto his shoulders, used the opportunity to jokingly promote his work, using the character of Red Skull and its symbology. See, social justice warriors are bankrupt of ideas. They have no understanding of the mythology of heroes or villains, and thus this is why all new cinema, literature, television is rated so low across the board. Except by themselves, who seem to be putting this media out not because you will enjoy it, but because it's good for you. Remember that. Remember that. Oh my goodness, as idiots say. This is a bombshell breaking story. Just when you thought you could go to bed, Project Veritas comes flying in the room and start just wrecking up shit, man. They're just wrecking up shit. CNN technical director Charlie, trying to get some pussy Chester, has been filmed talking to a supposed Tinder date when really it was a Project Veritas spy recording everything on a secret camera. Oh, there were over 5 dates revealing the secrets of the biased media company CNN and their efforts to sway political voting and the mindset of a nation through his term, propaganda. Ah. This time Trump, next time climate change. Now, big old swollen balls Charlie admitted everything that everyone already thought and could see with their own bloody eyes. That these MSM outlets never telling the full story, never reporting unbiased truth, and never being held accountable for trying to sway the political system and corrupt society with the cult of cultural woke ideology. With some of the most revealing statements from old Charlie swollen chestnuts being that they would show Biden in aviator shades and him moving around whenever he did, trying to paint him as a young geriatric. Hilarious. They were creating a fake narrative when it came to Trump's health. Remember that? You know, walking down a thing. But had no proof and were just basically trying to fling shit against the wall and see what stuck. He brags, look at what we did. We got Trump out. I'm 100% going to say it. And I 100% believe that if it wasn't for CNN, I don't know if Trump would have got voted out. For CNN, it was to get Trump out of office. Without saying, that's what it was. Using the term propaganda to describe the process. This is what he did. Next thing is going to be climate change. And Charlie, did I forget my condom Chester's response to the question if he thinks it's going to be a lot of fear surrounding the climate was yes. Yes, fear sells. Fear sells. So won't that be fun to look forward to? I mean, isn't it nice to hear a representative of the mainstream media tell the truth? Just tell the truth for once. See, it's eye-opening and refreshing. You know, news. So COVID passports, UK and the world, basically a social credit system or score, and it is coming somewhere near you and soon. US might be able to shrug it off because of a few wise men hundreds of years ago decided to write a bloody constitution. Shit. This is when political and corporate power structures combine to take away your freedoms and tell you how to live with government force to back it up. Forget your civil liberties and patient privacy entitlements. Your info is going to be on a stealable object employing a public medical app open to data hacks if you worry about that sort of thing, and any other racket your data can make money out of. And this has sparked worries of people purposely, possibly, that's hard to say, getting COVID so they have antibodies in their system and can get the doctor's note that way. The passports have universally low approval rates across the board, except China. Strange. The anti-fascist mob seem totally fine with the level of government and corporate control where private medical data is surrendered to basically attend public functions. When the CDC is currently saying that even if you are vaccinated, you can't return to normal in any way, as it doesn't mean you can't spread the less than 0.03% lethal virus. So keep that mask on. Keep it right where it is. So in our quickfire what's going around the world section, boom. So little Willy Wanker, Pete Buttigieg, does a publicity cycle ride where he gets this massive convoy of security to drive him 99% of his journey, whereupon he gets out, puts on his silly helmet before cycling the last 50 feet. Yeah, waving to the press. Oh, look at me. And they're just like, what a guy. Ha! What a guy. So it's been coming out that women who choose career over family in their lives are beginning to have more and more regrets on their deathbeds as their barren wombs whistle sad, lonely tunes. So, Mohammed cartoon controversy part 2. This time it's real. A teacher in the UK is trying to teach his students about Charlie Hebdo massacres, free speech and blasphemy, and the issues surrounding these highly significant topics, then became the centre of a blasphemy and free speech protest, sparking the whole outrage all over again as if it had just happened. We haven't got the shootings yet, but hang on. Showing that the UK, along with jailing people for mean things said on Twitter, is no longer a country of free speech. Hence. So Crowder has been banned and is back, but you might be banned again for flirting with being banned on purpose. more updates to follow. So AOC gives money to swing state Democrats to help with their campaigners and their campaigns, who all panic due to her toxicity and either decline or give it back. Ha. Further showing that she is the most ineffective politician in decades, except at dancing on Instagram to morons and spouting googly-eyed socialist talking points in a Valley Girl voice. So following up on last week, the migrant crisis is worse in history under Biden. It's even worse, with terror suspects being caught trying to cross the border and more people trying to storm the border in droves. More of those convoys, caravans. Leading to Biden and co. starting talks about filling the gaps in the wall, as they say. Basically continuing to build it. So the US calls for a pause on Johnson & Johnson vaccine after rare clotting cases similar to those of the issues with the AstraZeneca vaccine of the UK that was suspended by several countries. Though worryingly, you can't really reverse a vaccine, can you? So those with the vaccine will just have to cross their fingers and bloody well hope. Well, maybe getting a different second dose, I guess. I mean, how many COVIDs can you... How many can you get? Huh? Well, make sure you listen to your own personal doctor and not someone stupid like me. This one's a good one. So BLM, Marxist leader, turns capitalist, buying 4 houses costing nearly $2 million in wealthy white suburban areas. She proved me wrong when I said that none of the money being collected by BLM is ever going to help any black people. Helped her. Showing you really don't shit where you eat, do you? So teacher Alyssa Pirro had a few Chardonnays and decides to scream at all her white students that are riling her up about a white social club, challenging all their parents to come at me, man. Just come at me. What? You think you can handle this? You think you can handle this? Well, then just come at me. Not realizing that online video classes are on computers with memory cards and screen capturing capabilities. Giving everyone a bloody good laugh at what teachers are teaching the youth of today, except for those who have children, who are now realizing that they have little 1984 ideological monsters who snitch on you in their own house. It's coming from inside the house. So a microchip has been developed to be put inside humans to detect the possibility of getting COVID and spreading it, and whatever other evil they want to put in it alongside. 60 Minutes revealed. At once confirming every fear those they deemed conspiracy theorists for the last 20 years. Yeah, you were right. The device was caught perhaps doing the most sinister and creepy method of eradicating past communist atrocities, by photoshopping smiles onto the faces of the victors of the genocide at the hands of the Khmer Rouge. No jokes on that one. That's just psychotic. So, that was episode 2. I hope you had a good time. Please, like, share and subscribe. It really helps. Next time, come along. See what you can see.